The Lankavatara Sutra is concerned with what keeps us from being enlightened. And it tells us that what keeps us from being enlightened is our basic assumptions. Assumptions so basic that we don't even question them. That's why they're assumptions. And the most fundamental assumption that prevents us from being enlightened is the assumption that there's a real external world going on. Our attention is continually being drawn to it. It demands our attention. And it's true, we need to engage with it. We need to allow it to demand our attention to a certain degree for survival purposes. But for many of us, that's no longer sufficient justification for allowing this external world to dominate our attention so much. The attention could be described as applied awareness. And unfortunately, most of the time, we're applying our awareness to this so-called external world. And we justify it, possibly in terms of survival, but mainly because of the belief in its objective reality. This is a very limiting application of awareness. It's tight, restrictive, as if we're living in a body cast. It's rather like a prince having to live as a pauper and forget his princehood, or a Cinderella figure no longer able to realize or be a princess. Awareness is beautiful, tranquil, and it's at the heart of everything. But most of the time we encase it in this body cast, and we justify this by the fundamental assumption that this apparent world is objectively real. So the Lankavatara Sutra has been undermining this, looking into this, examining it in forensic detail. And one of the ways that we fuel the belief in the objectivity of a so-called external world is through the use of words. And that's what this verse is about, this next verse. Verse 431. Things born of words seem to belong to an objective realm, but when it is perceived that they are born of words, they become non-existent. So, words are a major culprit. Well, how can this be? Surely words point to real things. A cup of tea, that's real, that's an object. I can taste it. It's real, I can touch it, taste it and touch it, as well as see it and hear it and smell it. So surely it's the senses and not the words. Well, we've looked at the senses often enough in the past, so let's just stick with the words. In the previous video I mentioned a Frenchman called Pierre Schaeffer. And his idea of reduced listening is an idea which people don't seem to have. It's an idea which people have had trouble putting into practice. Reduced listening is just hearing a sound as something in itself. We tend to describe sounds in terms of their source. For example, that's the sound of a seagull. And sometimes we describe sounds in terms of their effect on us. That's a sad sound. We tend not to describe seagull sounds as happy sounds. But we don't actually describe the sound itself as something with a sharp attack and a long decay, high-pitched, a keening, pining sound perhaps, although we're going into describing it as an effect in that case. So it's quite an interesting practice. Can we just hear sounds as something in themselves rather than in terms of where they originate from and the effect they have on us? And I'm going to suggest similar exercise, reduced seeing. Reduced seeing. So I called this a cup, but it's actually clay. If I broke it, it'd be a broken cup. But if I broke it any further, say with a hammer, and broke it down into powder, would it still be a broken cup? Well, a broken cup comes with the assumption that it can be fixed. If I reduced it to clay, it would just be clay, no longer a broken cup. So what makes it a cup? Its functionality. I can use it in a certain way. If it's broken, I can't use it in the way it was supposed to function. So this cup is really simply functional clay. It's functional clay. So function is about use. As an object, this is a very transient thing. It's clay that's been taken, that's been given a certain shape and painted, and eventually it will return to that at some point. So as an object, it's quite a transient thing. But as something which has got a function, it's a bit more abstract, isn't it? So as a cup, it's clay at a certain point in time. But what's more important to us is its function, its use. And in fact, this is really how we relate to the world, in terms of our understanding of things. Most of the things that we really care about are abstractions. I've looked into this before, about how the world we really relate to is a world of abstractions. Things like music. It's not the CD that's important or the MP3 player that's important, it's the music that's on it. Ideas. Money is an idea. Love is an idea. Belief is an idea. Religion's an idea. Economics is an idea. Mathematics is an idea. Relationships are ideas. Family is an idea. That's our reality. We are not really materialists at all. What is my relationship with this cup? Ownership. I own this cup. But if I was living by myself on a desert island, would I be concerned with ideas of ownership? Would I make a point of saying I own this cup? Ownership is not something between me and an object, it's between me and you. This cup is mine, it's for my use. You may use it with my permission. But if it's just me and the cup, there's no ownership. So there's this naming of objects. It's called Nama-Rupa, described as the first two of 5 dharmas. We give name to form, and in doing so we discriminate an aspect of everything that's going on and give it substance, give it reality. That's the third dharma. And the fourth dharma is understanding this process and not being taken in by it. So that's the fourth dharma. And in the fifth dharma, we stop investing. We stop limiting our awareness in it and come back to awareness in itself. Suchness. This is the fifth dharma. So, getting back to music, look at how we allow words to create notions of an objective reality. And I'm going to suggest a counterbalance to this, and to start regarding words like musical notes. Musical notes do not point to anything real, and yet they can have a strong emotional effect on us. So let's understand words like music. Perhaps this is why poetry is a more honest use of words, because it uses words like musical notes, lyric poetry. And we can appreciate them as an emotional experience without using them to indicate an external objective world. So the poetic use of words is one that actually goes in the opposite direction. It brings the attention closer to itself. It brings awareness closer to its true nature, rather than the limiting nature which focuses itself on an apparent objective world. So musical notes, we enjoy them as they are, rather than insisting that they've got some objective reality, or that they're indicating some objective reality. Let's do the same with words. Enjoy the poetry.